Imagine a life where you work less, maybe live a lot more, and truly dictate your own terms. For many of us, it probably sounds like a bit of a fantasy, right?
Totally. Seems out of reach.
But what if that dream wasn't just, you know, possible, but actually practical, maybe even today?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we're diving into in this deep dive.
Hmm.
Our main source today is Timothy Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah, a really transformative book for a lot of people.
It absolutely challenged all the conventional ideas about work and wealth and retirement. So much so, apparently, it was rejected by like 26 out of 27 publishers at first.
Wow, that really tells you something, doesn't it?
It
How
does.
much it was pushing against the grain. And, in many ways, it still is. Our goal for you today really is to unpack the core ideas, the philosophies, and also those surprisingly practical strategies from the book,
Right.
pulling out the most important
Yeah.
nuggets of knowledge, you could say.
Absolutely. We're going to explore how Ferriss completely redefines success not just by how much money you make, but by, well, time and mobility. He sees those as the real currency.
Time and mobility, that's key.
Yeah. And you might be sitting there wondering, can you really get this luxury lifestyle without grinding away for decades until retirement?
It's the big question.
It is. And this deep dive, well, it's going to show you exactly how Ferriss, and actually quite a few others, have tried to do just that, and often succeeded.
Okay, so let's start with the really big idea he introduces. He calls it the new rich, NR for short.
The new rich.
Now, these aren't necessarily your typical billionaires.
Hmm.
They're people who consciously decide to ditch what he calls the deferred life plan.
That whole work now, live later thing.
Exactly. That traditional path, work tirelessly for 40 years, then maybe enjoy retirement. The new rich, they're all about creating luxury lifestyles now, in the present.
Using time and mobility as their main assets.
Precisely. Their currency.
Okay, let's dig into that because it's such a contrast to the standard 9 to 5, the cubicle dweller model, trading all your time for a paycheck. And it brings up this really critical concept, relative income. This is where it gets super interesting.
Yeah, this is a game changer for how you think about money.
Okay, so picture this. Who's actually richer? Let's say Jane Doe makes $100,000 a year, but she's working 80 hours a week.
Okay, grinding hard.
Versus John Doe, who makes $50,000 a year, so half the amount, but he only works 10 hours a week.
Right, so if you do the math, Jane's making, what, $25 an hour?
Yep. And John?
John's pulling in $100 an hour.
Exactly. So in terms of this relative income, John is 4 times richer.
It just completely flips the whole yearly salary focus on its head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Shows why just looking at that annual number could be so arbitrary.
But totally misleading.
The new rich get this. True wealth isn't just the absolute number, it's the earnings per hour, and crucially, the freedom that gives you.
And Ferriss himself, well, he learned this the hard way. He talks about his own journey.
Right, with his company, Brain Quicken.
Yeah. He was making great money, over $40,000 a month, financially amazing.
Sounds good on paper.
But he was working insane hours, like 12+ hours a day, 7 days a week. He describes hitting rock bottom, having basically a nervous breakdown in Florence, Italy. Stuck in an internet cafe for 10 hours a day, just totally overwhelmed.
Wow. It's often that kind of crisis that forces a change, isn't it?
Seems like it.
And for him, the real shift came from a decision he made while he was overseas. He decided to limit checking his email.
Just once a week.
Yeah, just 1 hour, every Monday morning. And what happened next was, honestly, kind of mind-blowing. His profits actually went up.
Increased. By how much?
By 40%.
Get out. Just by checking email lists.
Yeah. It showed him, fundamentally, that he had become the biggest bottleneck in his own company.
Wow. Okay, so from that realization, he developed this framework, D.E.A.L.
Right, exactly. D.E.A.L. And it starts with D for definition.
Definition.
Yeah.
So this step is about redefining your goals, but also, crucially, facing your fears.
Confronting fear. It starts with this really provocative idea. Everything popular is wrong.
Huh. Okay, that's a bold statement.
It is. And he tells this fantastic story about winning the Chinese kickboxing national championships back in '99.
Right, the kickboxing story. How did he win again?
He won all his matches by TKO, technical knockout, simply by pushing his opponents out of the ring.
Just pushing them out.
Yep. And the crazy thing, the real insight here, is that pushing people out was completely within the official rules. It just wasn't how people usually fought.
So no one else thought to do it.
Apparently not.
Hmm.
It perfectly illustrates this difference between the actual rules and the rules we sort of impose on ourselves.
With the self-imposed limits.
Exactly. Most of us play by these unwritten, self-imposed rules that really hold us back, like those fighters who never even considered that tactic.
So how do you break free from those? That's where fear comes in, right? He talks about fear setting.
Yes. Fear setting. It's a really powerful technique. Instead of just dreaming about what you want, you actually define your absolute worst-case scenarios in detail.
You write them down.
Yeah, get really specific. What's the absolute worst that could happen? How likely is it? How could you fix it?
And when Ferriss did this for himself, he realized his own worst case, the thing he was really afraid of,
Yeah.
it would probably only have a temporary impact, maybe a 3 or 4 on a 1 to 10 scale of terribleness.
Right. But the potential upside, the best case scenario,
That could be like a permanent 9 or 10.
it completely changes the risk calculation, doesn't it? Makes
Yeah.
taking the leap seem much less terrifying.
He gives some great examples too, like Hans.
Oh, yeah, Hans.
Yeah.
He went through this fear-setting process, defined his worries, and it gave him this huge sense of peace. And then he went off and started Nexus Surf, this cool surf adventure company down in Brazil.
And Jean-Marc, surviving on Musha Lagana?
Huh. Right. He was in what he thought was this disastrous situation, eating this basic mush, and he had this epiphany. He realized the worst really wasn't that bad.
He didn't need all the fancy stuff.
Exactly. What he needed was control over his time. It's a powerful reframing of what failure or disaster actually means.
It really drives home that core message. What we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do.
It often is.
Okay, so you face your fears. What's next in the definition step?
Dreamlining. This is where you get super specific about what you actually want.
Not just vague dreams.
No, concrete stuff. You list your having, being, and doing dreams, and you put them on timelines like 6 months and 12 months out.
And he says you need to make being dreams into doing actions.
Exactly. So being fluent in Chinese isn't actionable, but have a 5-minute conversation with a Chinese coworker, that's something you can actually work towards. It's a doing.
Makes sense. Then you calculate the cost.
Yes. This is the practical part. You figure out your target monthly income, or TMI. You do this by calculating the actual monthly cost of your top 4 dreams.
And he uses examples like fancy cars, right?
Yeah, to make the point that even seemingly outrageous luxuries might be more attainable than you think on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
like a brand new Lamborghini Gallardo Spider. He broke it down to something like $2,897 a month.
Okay, still a lot, but maybe not the $250,000 lump sum you imagine.
Precisely. An Aston Martin DB9. Around $2,000 a month. It shifts your focus from needing a massive fortune to needing a specific, achievable monthly cash flow.
Right, makes the dream feel more real, more possible.
Hmm.
And there's the comfort challenge. What's that about? Lying down in public?
Yeah, that's one of the exercises. It's about deliberately doing slightly uncomfortable things in public, like making eye contact for longer than usual or asking for a discount.
Why, though? Just to feel awkward.
It's about conditioning yourself to discomfort, building your tolerance for social awkwardness, which often holds us back from taking action. The goal, he says, is to develop the uncommon habit of making decisions for yourself and even for others. It builds mental muscle.
Okay, so define the goals, face the fears, make dreams concrete, build comfort with discomfort. That's D. What's next?
Next up is step 2. E is for elimination.
Elimination. This sounds like cutting things out.
Exactly. It's about cutting the clutter to maximize your impact. And the core idea here is huge, really disruptive. Doing something unimportant well does not make it important.
Ooh, say that again.
Doing something unimportant well does not make it important.
That hits hard. We spend so much time trying to be efficient at things that maybe don't matter.
Precisely. We confuse being busy with being effective, being efficient with being productive on the right things.
So it's not just about doing things right, it's about doing the right thing.
Infinitely more important, according to Ferriss. What you do matters far more than how well you do it if it's the wrong what.
Okay, so how do you figure out the right things?
This is where the classic 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, comes in.
Yes, Pareto. 80% of results come from 20% of efforts.
Exactly. So the goal is to identify that vital 20%. What are the few activities, the few customers, the few problems that are generating 80% of your positive outcomes or causing 80% of your headaches?
And Ferriss applied this pretty ruthlessly in his own business.
Oh, absolutely. He stopped contacting 95% of his wholesale customers, and he actually fired the 2% most problematic ones.
Fired customers. Wow.
Yeah. He was left with just the top 3%, who, it turned out, were generating 95% of his revenue with almost no intervention needed from him.
That's incredible. He realized he was just working for work's sake before that.
Totally. W4W, he calls it. Just being busy to feel busy, not actually moving the needle.
Okay, but firing customers, how do you actually do that? He talks about that profanity-laced complaint, right?
He got this really abusive email, and instead of arguing or defending himself, his response was basically calm and firm. A no-stories refusal.
What did he say?
Something like, I wish you well, but we can only continue to supply you if you can communicate without profanity. He just set a clear boundary, refused to engage with the drama.
Powerful lesson in setting boundaries. So this elimination principle goes beyond just customers, right?
Yeah,
What else should we cut out?
definitely. A big one is the low-information diet.
Less news?
Way less. Ferriss says he rarely watches the news, bought maybe one newspaper in 5 years.
How does that help? Don't you need to stay informed?
His argument is that most news is negative, irrelevant to your goals, and often out of your control anyway. This selective ignorance, as he calls it, frees up mental bandwidth for information that actually is important and actionable for you.
And he says it makes for better conversations.
Kind of counterintuitively, yeah. I can just ask people, tell me what's new in the world, and get the highlights without the noise.
Interesting. Okay, what else? Interruptions.
Huge one. Interruption. His main tactic. Check email only twice a day. Say 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. That's it.
Twice a day. Most people check constantly.
Right. And crucially, you set up an autoresponder to manage expectations.
To train people not to expect instant replies.
Exactly. The mantra is, beg for forgiveness, don't ask for permission, just do it. The autoresponder can even answer common questions.
Like that detailed if-then example he gives.
Yeah. If you need X, contact Susan. If it's about Y, here's the link. For anything else urgent, call this number. It basically pre-screens everything and directs people, removing you as the constant go-to, the bottleneck.
That makes so much sense. There was a case study, Charney.
Yes, Journey. Perfect example of applying these elimination principles. Focused on one key action, cut his work week from 40 hours down to 18.
While getting more done.
4 times the results. And he started taking Mondays and Fridays off, just by ruthlessly eliminating the non-essential.
It's amazing what you can achieve by subtraction, not just addition.
Totally.
Okay, so once you've eliminated the fluff, freed up all this time and energy, how do you keep things running smoothly without you having to be there all the time?
That leads us perfectly into step 3. A is for automation.
Automation. Creating income on autopilot. Sounds good.
Doesn't it? This starts with outsourcing life, leveraging virtual assistants, or VAs.
People you hire remotely to do tasks for you.
Exactly. And a key concept here is geo-arbitrage.
Meaning?
Using the cost differences between locations, hiring skilled VAs in places like India or the Philippines where labor costs are much lower. We're talking maybe $4 to $15 an hour for really capable people.
And what kind of tasks are we talking about? Not just business stuff.
Oh, all sorts. Ferriss gives examples from buying movie tickets, making vacation plans, researching diet plans,
Finding jobs, getting a broken window fixed.
even sending an e-card to your spouse. Seriously, anything that's time-consuming but doesn't absolutely require your specific skills or presence, offload it.
He recommends hiring firms, not just individuals,
Sure.
for backup.
Yeah, that's a key tip. Use VA firms like Brickwork or Your Man in India. Those were examples back then. There are many now. They have teams, so if one person is sick, someone else steps in. You avoid that single point of failure and usually get one main contact person who manages your tasks internally. Much more reliable.
Okay, VAs handle tasks, but what about generating income automatically? That's the muse concept, right?
Exactly. Finding the muse. A muse isn't just any business. It's a specific type of product or service designed for automated cash flow with minimal ongoing time investment from you.
Are there specific criteria for what qualifies as a muse?
Yes, he lays out some pretty strict ones. It should cost less than $500 to test the idea.
Okay, low barrier to entry.
It should be possible to automate most of the operations within about 4 weeks.
Quick setup.
And crucially, it should require less than 1 day per week of your time to manage once it's up and running.
Less than a day a week. That's the goal.
That's the autopilot dream. He shares that cautionary tale of Sarah.
Oh yeah, the stroller lady.
Right. Spent $12,000 developing this fancy high-tech stroller, and it completely bombed.
Ouch.
But then she found success with something much simpler. Humorous t-shirts for golfers, grossing $50 profit a day pretty much automatically.
Shows you don't need complexity. What about information products? He seems keen on those.
He is. Things like ebooks, online courses. Think Tony Robbins' personal power programs. They have advantages, often higher profit margins, and they can be harder for copycats to replicate quickly compared to physical products.
Right, easier to protect the IP sometimes. How do you test these muse ideas without spending a fortune like Sarah did initially?
Low-cost testing is key. He suggests things like using Google AdWords pay-per-click ads to drive traffic to a simple test page and see people click buy.
Even before you have the product ready.
Sometimes, yeah, just to gauge interest. Or running short, like 72-hour eBay auctions. Creating super simple test websites using tools like Weebly or WordPress. Matt Schmidt's fast-to-market approach is mentioned, just getting a basic version out there fast to see if it sticks.
And legal stuff.
Services like LegalZoom can help set up the basic business structure relatively easily. The whole point is fast, cheap validation.
Okay, makes sense. Then there's this idea of the remote control CEO. How does that fit in?
Well, Ferriss points out all the contradictory business advice out there.
Yeah.
Herb Keller saying build companies on love, Charles Revson saying he built Revlon by being ruthless.
Right, who do you believe?
Ferriss proposes a third option. Instead of debating management styles, just eliminate the human element wherever possible through automation and smart systems. Reduce the need for constant management decisions.
And he cites Stephen McDonald.
Yeah, McDonough ran this experiment in 21st century leadership. His company's revenue grew 30% while he was spending more time with his kids, less time managing directly. It challenges that idea that the CEO needs to be constantly hands-on for growth.
Automation again. And for selling these automated products. That lose-win guarantee.
Ah, yes. Super counterintuitive. Instead of a standard money-back guarantee, offer something better, like a 110% money-back guarantee.
You pay them to return it.
Essentially, yes. Or they get to keep a bonus item, even if they get a refund. He used this for his Brain Quicken supplement, gave a 110% refund, and let people keep a bonus DVD.
That sounds risky. Did returns go up?
That's the kicker. Returns actually decreased, and sales shot up over 300%. It removes almost all the risk for the buyer, builds massive trust, and makes the decision to buy much easier.
Wow. Okay, so D for definition, E for elimination, A for automation. That leaves L.
L is for liberation.
Liberation, getting free, right? Embracing the time and mobility you've created.
Exactly. But this can be tricky, especially for traditional employees who want to escape the office.
People are afraid to ask for remote work.
Often, yeah. They fear the no, or they just assume it's impossible. Ferriss suggests this powerful thought experiment.
Yeah.
The heart attack scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you had a mild heart attack. Nothing too serious. But the doctor orders you to work from home for 4 weeks. How would you make it work? What tasks truly require you to be in the office?
It forces you to figure out the logistics, to see what's actually possible when you have to. Strips away the assumptions.
Precisely.
Okay, so once you realize it might be possible, how do you actually transition? He talks about the hourglass approach.
Right. It's a gradual strategy. You start, perhaps, with that pre-planned absence, maybe using the recovery excuse. During that time, you make damn sure you are super productive remotely. Over-deliver.
Prove it works.
Prove it works better, even. Then you use that evidence to negotiate for, say, 1 or 2 regular remote days a week.
And then keep proving it.
Keep proving it. Make your remote days your most productive, and maybe even structure your in-office days to be less so, dealing with meetings and unavoidable FaceTime stuff. Then you negotiate for more remote time, eventually aiming for full mobility. It's about demonstrating value, not just asking for a perk.
Smart. What if the boss just says no? How do you get past that?
He suggests specific negotiation tactics. Don't just accept a flat no, ask clarifying questions like, okay, I understand it's not possible right now. What specifically would I need to achieve or demonstrate for this to become possible in the future?
Put the onus back on them to define the conditions.
Exactly. Or ask, have you ever made an exception to this policy before? Under what circumstances? It opens up the conversation, looks for solutions instead of hitting a brick wall.
Okay, so you get remote work. What about actually using that freedom? He talks about mini retirements.
Yeah, this is a big one. Challenging the idea that you have to wait until 65 to travel or take extended time off.
He argues it's not just for the super rich.
Right. He argues that taking several months or even a year off to travel can often be cheaper than staying home and paying your regular mortgage, utilities, car payments, especially if you go somewhere with a lower cost of living. Geo-arbitrage again.
Taking retirement in installments throughout your life instead of one big chunk at the end.
That's the idea. He talks about his own 15-month vision quest after automating his business.
Did he just relax the whole time?
Interestingly, no. He said it took him a good 2 or 3 months just to decompress, to unplug from obsolete routines, and to even become aware of how easily he distracted himself when there was no structure.
It's not an instant switch to freedom mode.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
And for packing for these long trips, forget giant suitcases. He suggests the buy it there method, or BIT.
Buy it there.
Yeah. Take a small settling fund, maybe $15 to $200, and just buy things like toiletries, basic clothes, whatever you need when you get there, as you need them, instead of trying to anticipate every possible need and lugging it all with you.
Pack light, buy local. Makes sense. But then, what happens when you suddenly have all this unstructured time? He mentions the void.
Yes, confronting the void. This is a real psychological hurdle. After you've achieved this freedom, eliminating the 9 to 5 grind, that question hits. Okay, now what? What the hell do I do today?
He actually had a panic attack about this.
Yeah, in London, apparently. Staring at the ceiling, completely overwhelmed by the lack of imposed structure. When external deadlines disappear, those big existential questions about purpose and meaning tend to surface.
It's the freedom is terrifying paradox.
Mhm.
So how do you fill that void meaningfully?
He suggests finding purpose in service, recognizing that service isn't just about, saving lives in a dramatic way. It can be about improving the quality of life for others, contributing in ways that resonate with you. He mentions organizations like Network for Good as examples of platforms for finding ways to contribute. It's about finding engagement beyond just work.
This also connects to simplifying your life overall, right? Cutting the clutter.
Absolutely. Physically decluttering as well as mentally. He talks about sacrificing things that are common but maybe overestimated, like owning multiple homes. He tells that anecdote about the decamillionaire who found his extra houses were just a pain in the ass.
More stuff, more problems.
Sometimes, yeah. He suggests practical ways to declutter services, like 1-800-WAOTJOK, using FreeCycle or Craigslist to get rid of things you don't need. Simplify.
Okay, and finally, he wraps up with some common mistakes, pitfalls to avoid on this path.
Yes, a few key ones. Don't avoid failure, expect it, learn from it. Don't work just for the sake of working. That W4W thing again. Don't let non-urgent things become urgent. Don't get fixated on one product or muse as the be-all and end-all. And don't neglect the social aspects, the human connections.
And the overall mindset?
His advice is basically, let the small bad things happen. Don't sweat every little detail. Focus your energy on making the big good things happen. Manage the important stuff, accept a little chaos elsewhere.
Okay, we've covered the D.E.A.L framework, but does this stuff actually work for people? You mentioned success stories earlier.
Oh yeah, the book and his blog are full of them. Real people applying these ideas.
Like Barron.
Right. He really focused on elimination and liberation. Got his company to agree to remote work, even got a $10,000 raise in the process.
And his work hours.
Doubled his productivity, but worked only 4 hours a week. Used the rest of the time for music, theater, fitness. His takeaway was profound. Reality is truly negotiable.
Wow. And W. Higgins, the guy who wanted to teach English.
Yeah, he ended up proposing remote work to his boss instead, based on the book's principles. It worked. Became a much more hands-on dad, a respected guy in his community. People apparently thought he was a doctor or some self-made millionaire because he had so much free time.
That's funny. And he's writing his own book now.
Yep. Shows how these ideas can ripple outwards.
Any others that stand out?
Well, there's Finn, the parent who used the principles to travel the world slowly with his kids, directly challenging that idea that kids tie you down.
Important perspective.
And B. Deschazar, who really embraced the automation side, took incredible trips to Asia, and now runs his business from coffee shops basically anywhere in the world, traveling indefinitely.
Living the dream. And the musician in Munich.
Ah, yeah, he did a tabula rasa, a clean slate, outsourced all the tasks he hated, freed himself up completely to focus on what he loved. Music, composing, languages, biking. It's about designing the life you want.
These stories really bring it to life. It's not just theory.
Not at all. And Ferriss also points to a few key books that influenced him, his fundamental 4, he calls them.
Okay, what are they? Quick rundown.
Sure. First, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Core message: don't overestimate others and underestimate yourself. Think bigger.
Good advice. Wax?
Vagabonding, an uncommon guide to the art of long-term world travel by Rolf Potts. This apparently really inspired Ferriss's own extended travels and the idea of unplugging progress.
Okay, makes sense. Third.
How I Used Infomercial Marketing to Create the $100 Million Thigh Master Craze by Peter Beeler.
The Thigh Master. Seriously.
Seriously, Ferriss sees it as a fantastic, detailed case study in building a massive business from scratch, focusing on the marketing and automation, nuts and bolts. Real numbers, real tactics.
Huh. Interesting mix. Thinking big, traveling deep, and practical empire building.
Pretty much sums up the influences.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like the key takeaway from the 4-hour work week isn't literally just working 4 hours. That's more of a provocative title, maybe.
It is provocative, yeah. But it represents the possibility. The core idea is much deeper. It's about a fundamental shift in how you see work, life, and success.
Challenging that whole deferred life plan we talked about.
Exactly. Designing your life intentionally, proactively, prioritizing freedom, time, experiences over just, climbing the corporate ladder or accumulating stuff.
It's about using efficiency, the 80-20 rule, automation, using those tools to buy back your time.
To create space for what actually matters most to you, whatever that might be. Travel, family, hobbies, service.
Right. It's about defining your own rich.
Well put.
Okay, so final thought for everyone listening. We always like to leave you with something to chew on.
That provocation.
Yeah. Based on everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
what's one single small step, maybe even something that feels a little scary, something you fear doing that you could take, like today,
Just one small thing.
that could potentially drastically change your daily reality and start moving you, even just a tiny bit, closer to living life more on your own terms?